All right, we are live. You're probably not going to be able to see much, but I had another one of those epiphanies, and hopefully, I'm sure you're not going to be any see up. Yeah, you could see some of the stars in the sky. Um, I love the fact of when things happen and you start thinking a little bit deeper, how things can just come to you that could make perfect sense. And just showing the night sky in my backyard. And it's probably going to be hard to see because, it's my cell phone. But I basically wanted to show you something that I discovered. Now, the title of this is going to seem very weird because it's titled like it says a dead branch. And you could probably see it, but it's going to be hard to see because it's pretty much nighttime. But one of the things I love to do at night, right before sunset, is I like to sit in my backyard as much as I can. And before sunset, there's a bunch of little bats that fly around, and I love the bats. I just love watching them because if you think about bats, it goes hand in hand with the video I made. They use sonar, they search in the darkness. And another thing I noticed is if you notice anything about the bats, and this has nothing to do with the first part of this, but it's a segue, bats seem very sporadic, but they serve a purpose. Because I watch them, they circle all around and they zigzag and they'll be flying and then all of a sudden they'll go up and down and they're all over where I just sit. I just love watching them. But it means that throughout, out of their chaos comes purpose. Because when they're flying sporadically, to us it looks like maybe they're drunk or something, but they're just trying to get their food and they'll do whatever it takes to achieve that. So the bat is a creature that may, to you and I, look very confused, very sporadic, very erratic, but it's a design to help it. So once the sun goes down and I can no longer see the bats, I like to sit out here nowadays, and this has been for the past couple of weeks, meditate. Now, before I did that, before the bats started coming out, when I sit out here, and you saw the video the other day, every time I sit out here, I'll be surrounded by the neighborhood cats. There'll be two of the adult cats, which there goes two of them. You're probably not going to be able to see them. They just ran by on cue. But a bunch of the kittens will sit out with me. They're like my guardian angels, which is funny if you watch or pay attention to Egyptian culture. They were always fascinated with cats because they said on a spiritual level, cats are very protective. But here's the thing. This branch, and again, I don't know if you could really see it, so I apologize, but I was inspired to do this video, so I wanted to do it right away. But this branch came off of, there's two little palm trees here that you're not going to be able to see, but you've probably seen them in the other videos, right? And this was lying on the ground. It's not even green anymore. It's all brown, and it's been dead for a couple of days. And while the kittens were sitting there in front of me, I started waving this in front of them and bouncing it up and down. And I had such a great time because one of the cats, I named him Leo, just would literally fly in the air to try and catch this thing. I would make it go up and down, and it would chase it, and I'm laughing hysterical. The kittens are having a good time. Even some of the adult cats started getting into it. And then my epiphany came. That even though, to anyone else, this is just a dead piece of a tree, a dead branch. It's a palm tree leaf. It served another purpose, which means even in death, depending on what you do, you can still, or something can still serve a purpose. Because to anyone else, this is a dead branch. This is something nobody would care about. And yet I was able to take this dead branch and entertain a bunch of cats and entertain myself in the process. And that would not have occurred if this branch was still alive and attached to that tree. Which made me really think about the death of my cat. Which, Oregon, I love him to death. And I really wish I didn't have to learn a lesson that way. But his death put me in a certain thought pattern. And that thought pattern made me feel a certain way. And then all of a sudden, as the days go on, I started researching different things. And then I started with the video I made earlier today, drawing these conclusions and seeing the synchronicity and the mirror reflection. And that's when I picked up this leaf, just like I've done before. The past couple of days, I've been using this dead branch, and one of the cats, and again, you can't see it right now, but he's trying to play with it right now. Let me see if I can go in the light, see if he'll follow me. Hold on a second, just to show you. There's a little bit more light here. Yeah, I don't think you could see him. It's too black. But the point is, they're all around me again. Sorry, but like I said, it's really dark out right now. But the point is, death is not the end. Unless you choose to think and believe that is. And even in death, there's always a purpose. It's whether you pay attention to it or not. So Orgon, even though his physical body is gone, the fact of me saying he's gone pushes him away, and his spirit will always live on, just like all of our spirits will move on, because we are not our bodies. We are just a light being with a soul that needed something that could keep us in a third dimensional / fourth dimensional plane to be able to experience what we can experience here while we're here. And when we close our eyes and take our last deep breath, we don't just disappear and we're gone forever. So yes, this is just a dead branch, but it can be so much more. You could make something out of it. You can entertain cats with it, and it wouldn't have happened if it was still part of the tree. I mean, look at your house. What is it made of, most likely? It's made of wood. Where does wood come from? Wood comes from trees. What are trees? They are living entities. And they sacrifice themselves to create something that will sustain our lives. In other words, even though that wood came from a tree that is now dead, it still served another purpose. And if you choose to see life in that positive perspective, you will see that everything happens for a reason. And life is what you make of it. So most people will walk by a dead branch, won't even pay attention to it. And those might end up finding one and doing the same thing I did, using it as something to play with cats with. But they would never think of it as, wait a minute, that thing, even though it's dead, still brought joy. So someone or something that you care about in your life that could be physically gone will only stop bringing you joy is if that's all you believe that they were, is just a living being or creature or whatever. And now that they're not living in your sense of the word, that they cannot bring you joy ever again. And I challenge you, to anyone that's lost anyone or anything that was special in their life, think of a funny moment that you have shared with them at that and any particular time in your life, and I guarantee you, you'll stop and smile for a second. Which means even though they are long gone, they can still affect you in a positive way. What you do with your life depends on how you look at things. You could see this as just a dead branch, or you could see it as part of life that can continue to do other purposes even when it's gone. If you want to choose to be sad, then you will be sad, and you will experience things that make you sad. Life is whatever you choose it to be. So if you've been choosing things that make you sad or angry or lonely or divisive or whatever, hateful, spiteful, what are you doing to change it? Why are you keeping it? Ask yourself, what can you learn from that experience so you can move on? Because remember, once you learn something, you no longer have to learn it anymore. It's when you're refusing to learn something is when something continues and continues. It's like being in school and you don't learn the lessons and you get left back. You have to relearn everything. But once you learn it, you don't have to learn it again. So if there is something constantly being repeated in your life that does not bring you joy, instead of ignoring it, instead of fighting it, instead of running away from it, instead of pretending it doesn't exist, say to yourself and look deep within, what can I learn from this experience? And once you find it, which means you have to dig deep inside, which corresponds with the video I made earlier today, and watch it if you haven't, be honest with yourself and be unafraid to dig in deep to find the root of the problem. Or do nothing and wonder why your life does not change year after year, no matter how many pep talks you give yourself or how many speeches that you hear that make you happy, how many people share in your situation. If you're not doing something to change it, you are the one that ultimately suffers. So you have to ask yourself, is your suffering serving a purpose for you? In other words, is somebody lazy and they maybe injure themselves and they milk that injury so they don't have to work anymore, so there's really no incentive to heal yourself? You have to be that honest. And that's when I talked about the inspiration of the video earlier about all of a sudden being obsessed with the caves and digging deep and searching and looking through the dark. Because what do bats and cats have in common? They both can see at night. They're both unafraid of the dark. And they can both bring joy, depends on how you look at it. I am totally fascinated when I see these cute little bats that look like they're struggling to fly. Every night, by clockwork, once the sun's about to go down, they start flying around. And to me, it's entertainment. So they're there to entertain me, whether they know it or not. And that's irrelevant, even if they did or didn't know. So you can view this as a dead branch, or you can view it as something that you can use to have other purposes, even though it's dead. When it's your turn, you really think you're going to close your eyes forever and then you cease to exist? Infinity is not possible if you're not in it. And it's simple to prove infinity. Just start with the number 1 and add another number and keep going, and then tell me which number ends. It will go on forever, which means the universe has to exist forever in order to do that. You are forever. So what's your rush? Sit back, enjoy life. See it, the events that are happening in the world, as a movie. And know that when it's your time or someone else's time, there is always a reason for it. And a lot of times, if you think about it, love can be one of the most selfish things. Sometimes we won't put down an animal when we know it's suffering because we don't want to lose it. And that puts the animal in jeopardy. How many times have you seen with family members that they'll try and hold on for as long as they can and live in a hospice until they die and fade away and rot away, but because we love them so much, we don't want them to go. And they choose to allow themselves to stick around just one more day so you won't feel bad. If you think about it, love can be very selfish. So that's why you also need empathy and compassion. Love is not enough, because you can hurt those you love, but it's very hard to hurt things that you empathize with. There's a big difference. Love can be used as a tool. I mean, how many people in your life, or maybe you did it yourself, or you heard somebody else, where they'll say, well, if you loved me, you'd do this. You could literally walk up to a stranger on the street and say, I love you. It doesn't mean you believe in it or it's true. So love is not always necessarily truth. But there's a difference with empathy and compassion, because those, love can be for yourself, it could be selfish, but you cannot be selfish when you are full of empathy and compassion. So there is a big difference. So that's why even in the quote-unquote truther world or awakened world or spiritual world, they always talk about love, but they hardly ever talk about empathy and sympathy and the things that involve a higher expression of your being, because love can be manipulated, love can be a lie. You cannot lie about your compassion and your empathy. You either have it or you don't. There are those who will gladly kill an animal, and there are those that will happily save an animal. So, as usual, I will go into tangents, but I always speak my mind. I've never scripted anything. Nothing is ever written down. I just come across an idea in my head, and if it's worthy enough to share, I will express it and just speak from the heart. Trust in yourself that you will always be guided in the right direction, even if you don't know where you're headed. You've made it this far. Let go of the fear. Enjoy your life, regardless of what's around you. Because if you're in the eye of the storm, it doesn't matter what's happening around you. The eye of the storm, you're safe. So I want to thank you for listening. Let me know what you thought about this, and maybe the next time you see a dead branch, you won't just walk past it where it serves no purpose and no meaning, because then it truly is gone. So if all of this inspired me, and part of it had to do with my cat having to die that I love, and it helped inspire others, then what he did was sacrificed his life for a greater good. Or I could be just making shit up. Who knows? I'll leave that for you to decide. But as always, I thank those that care enough. 9 people liked it out of 20 people watching. Again, a lot of the things I talk about are not going to be very popular. It's not going to get out there to the masses, unfortunately, but it will get out to some people, which means no matter what you do in life, somebody will always listen. And that's all I can do. But if I help one person and they help to awaken the world, then I did my part. I don't need all the credit. I don't need all the fame. And maybe there's a reason that I don't have all the fame and all the credit and all the views, because it allows me to continually do this without being harassed, without being bothered, without the complications of what being famous brings, if that's the case. I don't need to be famous. I don't need to be wealthy. And I genuinely care about all of you to have a better, happier life. And if I can say something or do something that helps you get a little bit closer to that, then to me that serves my purpose. And when it's my time to go, I can look back and say, you know what? I did something. And that to me means everything. What it means to you, I'll leave up to you. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night, and I look forward to reading your comments. Take care, everybody.